Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to today's program, the afternoon edition. My name is Isa Nu. Today, we are going to be discussing issues that pertains to flooding. As you know, many communities across the country, length and breadth of the country, is being devastated as a result of the flooding that is taking place now. And as you can see, all communities that are resided or resident in the flooding plain in Nigeria are affected by this. Most especially, even farmlands where we get our food from are also affected. So the issue of flooding has become an annual issue. But then the question is, how then do we address issues of flooding? Flooding is is something that we cannot say that we can stop as man, because it's a natural disaster, it comes. But then issues like these are issues we leave to experts for them to give us the best terminology to analyze issues that regards to flood. And today, we are going to be discussing this with nobody but Professor Abdullahi Jibril from University of Abuja, the head of Department of Geography and Environmental Management. Prof, good afternoon and welcome to the program.
Good afternoon. Thanks for inviting me.
It's nice having you on this afternoon program, and I'm sorry for the itches that we had before now. But then, looking at our present situation, it looks like everything now is going down south. It started from Lokoja, Nasarawa, and the rest. What is our current position with respect to the issue of flooding?
Well, looking at your preliminary reports, flooding is one of the weather events that ravage the world. It's not limited, restricted to Nigeria, but it's an extreme weather event which affects both lives and properties. Flooding generally is of two types. We have flooding arising from the river and flooding arising from the coastal areas. The flooding we have had in the one in the north, in Lokoja and Waterfields, those are arise from the rivers. And the one we have down south, Bayelsa, Delta, and so on and so forth, are flooding arising from the coastal areas. And the facts of the matter is that flooding has become a natural phenomenon in this country, and that it has become a regular occurrence. And the fact remains that we need to develop a mechanism to address, reduce the menace of flooding. We cannot completely eliminate it, but we need to look at its frequency, its occurrence, its characteristics, so that we can now try to see how we can reduce it to the barest minimum in terms on its implications on life and properties, in terms of foods, and so on and so forth.
Okay, people have also raised two major issues because it's sometimes confusing. Some people do believe that flooding in Nigeria is as a result of the dam from Cameroon, our neighboring country. While some also believe that, okay, it is as a result of the torrential rain. So where should we stand with respect to what is happening now in Nigeria?
Yeah, within the Nigerian context, there are two schools of thought. Let me also, before I get to that level, let me provide this background. Generally, flooding is being explained as a result of the interplay of the climate change. And in looking at climate change, there are three schools of thought in climate change. There are those that don't believe that the climate is changing. There are those that believe that the climate is changing. There are those that believe that, look, we have moved away from climate change. Rather, what we're talking around now is adaptation, resilience. These are the two schools of thought.
So which of the school of thought do you believe?
Well, I'm of the school of thought that the climate is changing and we should move past climate change now. We should be talking about adaptation.
Okay.
And that is where we are now. Okay. It's because we are very soft on adaptation, because we don't have any ideas about adaptation. That is why all this crisis is coming up. But back to your question. There are those that believe that because the water was released from the Lado Dam in Cameroon, that is what is happening. There are those that said, oh no, it is a climate change. But the fact remains that why was the water released from Lado Dam? Because it was overfilled. Was the water released in dry season? If it released in dry season, will it have impact? No. So all these things are weaved around climate change. So whether the water was released in Lado Dam, whether it is climate change, we are all saying the same thing. But the fact is that when the water is released from there, we don't have an embankment that will hold that water. The water moves straight to the rivers, to the channels, to the drains, to the rivulets, and those rivulets are overflowed. Coupled with the fact that the rainfall has been continuous for some days, which means that the amount of water that the soil can hold, the coastal area can hold, has been overstretched. And what happened? The whole areas will be flooded.
So now, well, let me say, your relative, or should I call them your neighbor, in terms of disciplinary now, I mean, the urban planners or the town planners, they believe that it is to a greater extent because we don't take issues of town planning very, very important. That's why we are seeing the devastating effect of this flood. Do you toe same line with them?
Yeah, to a larger extent, I will agree with them. Why? Because in the essence of town planning is to align the developmental issues in the urban areas vis-a-vis the land use characteristics. Every land has its own peculiarities. You don't cite land uses in the urban centers anyhow. You cite land uses on the basis of the characteristics of that land that you want to use. For instance, if you want to build residential areas, it is important that you stay away from areas that are liable to flooding. If you want to build road, for instance, it is important that you take into consideration whether that areas will be liable to flooding, whether that soil is suitable for the construction of the roads. These are issues that town planners bring into the table. But the fact is that most of us today, especially in the developing countries, we do not reckon the role of town planning into the decision making, mostly in the government. For instance, let me give you an instance. If this flooding we're talking about, I'm sure the town planners would have even categorized area liable to flooding in three categories. For instance, you have a high risk areas, a moderate risk areas, and of course a low risk areas. A high risk area is an area that you should avoid completely in terms of settlement. It means that area must be completely vacated because it is a high risk area for flooding. A moderate risk area is also an area that is also very not suitable for habitation. And of course, we have the low risk area which we can habitate in that area because the risk of flooding there is very low. The town planners put all this thing together, but do we comply with it? No. Sometimes even the government institution too even flout the rules. So the town planners need to enforce these town planning principles for them to prevent some of these extreme weather events we are having.
If you also move further, when that of the flood in Lokoja happened, you discover that we had serious issues coming down the north. The road was completely cut off.
Correct.
And people said, okay, in the last 10 years, we've never had it like this. The dam in the Lado Dam in Cameroon, yearly they do open it, but it has never been like so. This year's own, why is it different? What makes it different from the previous one?
It tells you the issue of climate change we are talking about. You don't expect the volume, the frequency, the intensity, the duration of rainfall to be the same every year, every time. It is the same because of our climate change. So it is possible the one you're talking about in 2010 or 2012 don't have this scenario in terms of the volume, in terms of the density, in terms of the frequency, in terms of the duration, in terms of the amount of precipitations. They varies. So if we have this year, because of rapid increase, the rate of climate modification and climate change, then we should expect more of the flooding to occur. Because the volume of water that comes to the stream determines the amount that will be released. Because if you don't release that dam, the water, it will damage the dam, and that has a lot of consequence. But unfortunately, we don't have the mechanism to harvest this water, to harvest this dam, the excess water from the dam, because these waters are also used for power generations and other activities. But because we don't have the capacity to harvest it, that is why it's becoming more destructive for us.
Okay, are you insinuating that we need more dams in Nigeria to harvest those water that has been released?
I think there's no doubt about that. It's very important. In terms of long-term solution, we need more dams. Because that will, if we have more dams, this water is coming, we're able to harvest this water, to store this water. Maybe we'll have flood embankments or dikes. Those who have reduced the menace that would have occurred as a result of this flooding. And more importantly, people that are living along the floodplain areas need to be evacuated. You see, the fact remains that for the past 2-3 months, NIMED, Nigerian local agencies, have been giving warning to the state government, to local communities that, look, this is what is happening. But people do not take this warning into cognizance.
You've raised this issue, the issue of NIMET, the issue of NEMA, making sure that they provide relief materials and the rest. But some other people have also have this belief that, why are we so reactive, most especially the government agencies? Why not being proactive when we have the town planners who are also stationed within local government, stationed within state government? Why aren't we more proactive to make sure that people don't build on these floodplains?
Thank you very much. You see, one of the measures that we in developing countries and this part of the world are known is reactive approach. For instance, in 2010, in Kogi State, another part of the country, we had flood. Many lives were lost. And by that 2012, data have been provided in terms of the volume of water, the frequency, the duration over a period of time. On the basis of this, you should be able to interpolate, to project when we are likely to have that same volume of water in the next 10 years, the next 5 years, the next 3 years, the next 2 years. If you have this data, that's what science has provided for us. We can predict that this is a likely period, or what we call the recurrence interval of this volume of water that will come at so time. If you have this information, what do? You need to evacuate the people from that place, whether they like it or not. But the question is this: when it happened 10 years or 12 years ago, has the government provided enough accommodation, enough camp for the people, so that when this thing happens, they move to that place there? The answer is no. I don't think most of the states that this thing has happened, they have enough camp. I don't see enough camp in say like Kogi, enough camp in say like Jigawa State and so on and so forth. They are going to the schools, they are going to church and mosque. That's not the solution. I expected that when this thing happened 10 years ago, the government look, oh, this area is a no-go area. We need to build a camp, a functional camp, with every facilities there. When this is happening, tell people, look, this is what is going to happen. This area here, this is a high-risk area, this is a moderate-risk area, this and that. You are going to evacuate these people from here, go and stay in that place there. That will reduce the loss of life and properties. And again, I expected that for the past 10 years, the government of each state would have known that these areas has a high-risk area. Those houses should go away, irrespective of the consequences. Look at what people are going through.
Yes, people are going through so much challenges now, most especially. But then the issue of making sure that you relocate
yes.
People that are living within this particular area is something that not everybody will take lightly, because if you go to the southern part of the country, mostly the south, where you have them close to the ocean and the rest of it, like that has been their ancestral home. Trying to relocate them, reintegrate them, and bring whatsoever help they needed. They may see it as something that you are trying to go beyond their own freedom to put them in a position where they can't find themselves.
I agree with you, but the fact is that the government needs to talk to these people. They need to talk to these people, tell them the reasons why this thing has to be done. They need to build confidence in them. They need to build trust in them. You don't do this when the incident has occurred. You would have built these things over a long period of time. That look, what we are trying to do is that if peradventure there is crisis, there is hazard, this is where we are taking you to temporarily until the water is subside and your house is safe and clear for you to come back. We are not saying that you are uprooting them from the ancestral home. You are taking them to a temporary shelter where their life will be protected, where their property will be protected. But the government will not be trusting them. It's not about coming when there's crisis, you move them to a place. You give them 1,000, you give them mad kettles, or you give them one. I mean, that is ridiculous, especially in this period of politics.
So you need to build, as it's happened now, government should have put a mechanism now, immediately this subside, so begin to build trust in people, communicate with them. Look at the traditional rulers, that look, if this is what we are doing, we're going to build a house in so place for you. And the house we are going to build, make sure those houses should take the cognizance of their cultures and belief systems. We're not saying you should build a bungalow for them. Look at where they are living. How does their house look like? That is social. You look at their social status and replicate those buildings for where they can stay temporarily for 3 weeks, for 1 month, for 2 months, until the whole thing subside and they come back to that place. Nobody is removing them from their ancestral room. But believe in me, it is important at this stage. Like, look, the government at the end of this, the government need to go back to the areas, the town planner need to mark those areas that are prone to high risk areas, and there are no two ways to it. Demolish, let the places go.
Okay, Prof. Now that we are having this situation on ground, and definitely, most especially, economic zone, the farmlands, and so many places are affected. Not just even human settlement. Humans need to live, and for you to live, you need to eat. So now, if that is the case, why we resettle humans? Then how do we then manage the issue of farming and the rest of it?
You see, that is another aspect of it. Farming, other things very difficult to manage that come with consequences. But of course, in developed system, there are sometimes they provide flooding insurance.
Okay.
Like, I know some of these people that obtain loans from the central banks and what have you, they have insurance policy. If you won't build a house, I'm not sure any bank will give you a loan to build an estate in a floodable areas. That bank cannot guarantee that place there. So normally, when you know this is the risk involved in it, you have to get an insurance cover. But I know most of these people don't have insurance policies on where they live and what have you. And I think that is where the government need to come in. Because if the government don't come in, the cost of living is going to be high. There's going to be famine. The inflation is likely to increase more than what we are witnessing today. And the consequence will be very, very tremendous for us across the country. So what the government needs to do is that, look, as much as quickly as possible, they need to provide succor. Some succor in terms of relief and what have you. They should have a mechanism to cushion the effect of this flooding on food items. And then the farmers, they should have a head count. Had a head count on how to cushion their effect, either by giving them a kind of insurance policy, so much covers as an interim. If not, we are in for famine in years to come.
FCT has been one of the major states in the past that has always been affected with flooding. But this year it seems like it's a different ballgame. What do you think were the measures they put in place to see that there is the impact is not as what we used to witness in the past?
To my understanding, in the past, the last incident that happened in FCT, I know the ministers and the various organs of government, they were so concerned about the issues of flooding, the issues of channelizations, blockage, and what have you. And I know the Abuja Marina Protection Board has been concerned about it. And I think FCT was able to take that to the different areas. And if you look at it, most of the areas that are liable to flooding, the demolition has been taking place in Abuja, especially areas that are liable to flooding. People build houses there. But FCT has been on top of their games. The town planning and what have you. That has significantly reduced the menace of flooding. I think that is what other institutions need to look at it. Because if you see day in, day out, there's demolitions along the floodplain areas. You go to local governments and what have you. Early this year, many houses were demolished there. And that is why the menace are reduced significantly. Because the moment the waterway is cleared, the water has their own part. The moment their way is cleared, the impact will reduce. The impacts on life and property will reduce. And I think that FCT is able to achieve that because they ensure that they are planning the procedure for management of land and what have you, they follow it to the latter on what is in their land use. That is what they're able to achieve, what they are achieving right now in FCT. And I think I also encourage them to keep up doing that, so that nobody will abuse the land use system in the Federal Capital Territory.
Okay, let's quickly listen to the director of FEMA, that's Federal Emergency Management Agency, with respect to all they did during or before the flooding took place.
The Director General of the FCT Emergency Management Agency, Alhaji Abbas Idris, while noting that urban flooding was a major threat in the Federal Capital Territory, stressed that all identified infractions would be removed. Describing this week's flash flood in some parts of the territory as a wake-up call, the DG FEMA appealed to residents to adhere to the master plan and approved building codes. The FEMA boss urged residents to always use the 112 emergency toll-free numbers in the event of a disaster.
We are working assiduously with all the stakeholders to ensure that we could not get anything that is going to be devastating in the FCT. This is a wake-up call, the flood of a few days back, and it was we were able to identify the obstructions caused that led to the flash flooding recently. And I always want people to realize that Abuja is a growing city, it's an urban city, and the flooding that we're having is urban flooding. It's due to activities, constructions going on. So a lot of blockages, a lot of diversions, a lot of infractions, and these are the things that we are calling on all the residents that they should avoid. But if they don't follow the master plan, follow the approved plans given to them, definitely, no matter how big a construction, a building reaches, we are going to pull it down.
Also speaking, the Director of Forecasting, Response and Mitigation, FEMA, Mrs. Florence Wenegeme, who led the team on an assessment tour to areas affected by the recent downpour in the Federal Capital Territory, appealed to residents not to drive during heavy rainfall, noting that FEMA will soon embark on sensitization.
If you look at the statistics, because of the efforts put in place by FCT Emergency Management Agency, being the coordinating agency in FCT, looking at the statistics, you will realize that the number of lives lost previous years have been reduced drastically. And after our assessment, we have also agreed that the slip road from Games Village heading towards Galadima roundabout is going to be barricaded as usual. For the past 3 years, we have always barricaded that road because it has been realized that that location is always overflowed too. And with the ongoing project there, we wouldn't want anything to happen at that location again.
Following the seasonal cloud prediction by the Nigerian Meteorological Agency, normal onset of rainfall in the Federal Capital Territory is expected by the 24th of May 2022. Hulina Adojo, ASO TV News.
Okay, now, Prof, you've listened to the Director of FEMA and looking at or listening to what he has said. It aligns with some of the points you raised. So now, if we are to move further, because now that we are having a situation that even span beyond the FCT.
Yes.
We're having a situation in the riverine areas, in places like Lagos and the rest. How can they address this this problem, most especially those that live in the coastal area? Because you cannot resettle them for long. At a point, definitely the water is going to recede. But can they be shifted today, tomorrow, they return back? How can they solve this issue permanently?
Yes, that is, when I was laying the background, in flood planning, you have to look at it from three perspectives. You look at it from the high risk areas, the moderate risk areas, and the low risk areas. Those houses that are considered to fall within the high risk areas and moderate risk areas, we have no choice than to go.
The people have to be resettled. Those that are in low-risk areas, fine, we can allow them and then continue to monitor and evaluate the situation there. Why the situation, Lagos has been up and doing. Yes, they are raising an alarm in Lagos now, but before now, they've done a lot of clearance in the waterways and what have you. That is why Lagos has not been in the news recently in terms of the number of people that have lost their life and properties and what have you, because they have been up and doing throughout the season. With respect to Kogi State, which is where most of the things have happened this time around, you will realize if you are driving through Lokoja, all the way from the other side where there's rivers, you see that they are trying to build one small embankment and what have you there. When you see what they are doing there, you know that it's child play. There are houses that are there. Most of those houses, they have no choice than to go. And I bet you in years to come, that road, that linear road there, the water will take it over.
You mean the main expressway that leads down to the north?
Yes, the water will take. The water will take it over. So, and I think this is the high time now. The government should be looking on the planning they have, because we are in the era of climate change. There are no two ways to it. You have to plan for it. They must be resilient. There must be adaptations. But the government are not planning for those things. They are not looking at, go to one of those states there, and most of these people that were affected, go and look at what they are going through. Because the government had no plan for adaptation, for resilience. And this is the critical stage we are. Nobody is talking about climate change, whether it's existing or not. We are now at the period of resilience. How are the people adapting to it? That is the crucial period we are in now. And I think immediately after this, the government will understand, will know, and look and tell and call meetings within the communities, within the estate owners, that look, we cannot afford to continue to lose properties and life year in, year out. This house X and Y falls within the proximity of this area, we have to go, irrespective of the cost implication, irrespective of who owns it. If we don't do that, I think we are just pretending. And the government should have, in that place too, they should have a plan, alternative place to go. People that are living around that area, they should be moved away. I know it's going to be cost effective, but this is the responsibility of government.
Okay, let me quickly, because you've raised a very critical issue here, that if actions are not being taken, definitely some part of the country will be cut off, because that is the major road that links the southern part of the country and the northern part of the country. That's the bridge that connects Kogi and move down to the Abuja axis. Now, looking at that same particular bridge, should there be any alternative routes, or what are the remedy that they can put in place to forestall issues like that not happening?
Well, you see...
Sorry, if I can, should dredging of that river be an option?
There's no doubt about it. These are the issues we're talking about. If the dredging has been done for the past 10, 20 years, maybe we didn't have money. Maybe if we had started it for the past 20 years, these issues would have been reduced drastically. That is the truth of the matter. Dredging there are no two ways to it at this point in time. Yes, it's expensive. Nigeria has been a lot of challenges, but we need to think out of the box. You know, the president yesterday gave a marching order to the Ministry of Water Resources that they should have a flooding plan within 90 days. We are waiting to see the options they are coming with it. Maybe they will come with an option, dredgings, and another alternative to address these issues of flooding, because it is a very critical issue. Yes, there's a climate council. The federal government has inaugurated a climate council, but the fact remains that the state government, they also have the climate council, because environmental issues is in the concurrent list of the constitutions. Everyone's talking about the federal government. What are the state government doing? The state government has Minister of Environment. What are they doing? We don't see effect for the state government, apart from buying mad, buying kettles, and maybe putting people in primary schools and in secondary schools and put it in the pictures and what have you. That is ridiculous.
Thank you so much, Professor Abdullahi Jibril, or Jibril Abdullahi, sorry if I mean to say, the head of Department of Geography and Environmental Management, University of Abuja. You've indeed gave us an opening to the issues that are happening, and I hope that the government is going to take your advice with respect to how to manage the issue of flooding to forestall future occurrences. So this is how far we can go today on the program, the afternoon edition. My name is Issa Nu. Have a wonderful day and stay blessed.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.